Thank you very much for taking the time on this Friday morning to join us.
Yeah, we have a fun session. As you can see, we're both wearing headphones because we have a little sound pad here and a lot of sounds. So if you have headphones, be good to pull them out. You hear the sound better. Just doing a quick sound check. Also looking at Charlotte, if we can all hear this. I think we can. Cool, then let's get started.
So Ginger xMassiveMusic, a creative music agency. Before I introduce myself officially, I'd like to introduce my colleague Marijn and take it away, Marijn.
So yeah, I'm Marijn. I'm a creative strategist here at Massive Music Amsterdam. I've been playing music my entire life. I started at piano very early, watched the Blues Brothers, wanted to become a jazz saxophone player, actually got cold feet, studied economics, went overboard, got a master's degree here at Nijrode in business management. And then I wanted to go back into the creative, started at Interbrand, really working as brand consultancy. And about 5 years ago, I joined Massive, focusing solely on the audio identity part of brands and helping brands, find their voice, translate brands into sound and music. That's what I've been doing for UBS, Voltare, Deutsche Bank, a few others as well. And excited to be here. And then I'd like to hand it to my lovely colleague here, Shai.
Thanks, man. Yeah, so I'm sure a lot of you are tuned in, probably are acquaintances or colleagues from the industry. So welcome to all of you once again. I am Shai Caleb Hurston, the founder and partner in Ginger xMassiveMusic, the merged German international kind of new music force in the market. I can quickly give you a rundown on my basic history in how I got into all of this, which I find maybe a little bit interesting to look into. When I was 5 years old, I stumbled into my granddad's cellar and saw his drum kit sitting there and thought, what's that? And kind of started getting into playing around while we were on holiday in Las Vegas at his house. Since then, of course, music's been in my life. In every decision I've ever made, it's really influenced my entire life. I've been working in studios since I was 15 years old. Opened my own music agency in South Africa, where I'm originally from. Where I met my wife, who's a lovely German lady from Lübeck, and we decided eventually to move our family. At the time we had a little boy, and we moved our family to Berlin, where I worked for an amazing company for many years. And after that, I decided to open and found my own music company, music agency called Ginger. So I opened Ginger, and for many months we started to grow, and eventually we decided to merge with international music agency Massive Music. And up until now we've had a very successful run, and we're very proud to be presenting for you today. So what is it that we do? We at Massive Music obviously help agencies and brands find their voice and tell their story through music and sound. And I think you can elaborate a little bit on this, Marijn.
Yeah, I think what we see is it always has to be a perfect thing. So we started as a music production for advertising mostly, but what we see now is really the rise of brand identities in sound and music. So really going from UI sounds to the small product sounds to events to sponsorships. And I think that's also what we want to talk to you guys about today, the developments we see and how we can utilize the power of sound. But before we go into, it's always good because I think we have a small little section to just elaborate on the power of sound, because we often feel it's overlooked. So I have a little snippet and I'll talk over it because I think that works with Zoom now. Of how sound directly actually, how much power there is, how much utilization you can do. So
it's a nice little palette refresh for the morning.
Yeah, just to freshen up the ears. So here it is. So you, for example, have the bass line that immediately is in a certain decade. You want to target a demographic. Our brands use that a lot as well. You talk to animals and children through melody before they learn words.
Lullaby.
Yeah, add two notes, you get the association with big shark. Put people in a certain mood for the message that's about to come. Listen, man, certain sounds have direct physiological effects. You know, these lower heart rate, blood pressure, make you more relaxed. You can hear if it's day or night. These sounds usually are not that good for your heart rate and blood pressure. And you can hear abstract sounds, which is so even if there's no one around, if the tree makes noise, if the tree makes sound, you actually know where not to stand. I think that's cool to say. It's been so crucial for evolution. We only see limited in front of us.
Well, you only see kind of 180,
yeah,
right? But you actually hear 360.
Yeah,
and you can't really close your ears. I mean, you can block them, but you can close your eyes, but you can't really close your ears, right?
No. I think that's true. It's actually the first sense we developed as well in the womb, and we respond to 20% faster. I got a little question as well for everyone at home, because we hear so much. I have 2 examples of water being poured, and up to you guys, you might get a bit of a puff of reaction, but if it's cold or warm water being poured. So here's the first sample. Cold or warm water being poured. And then sample 2. Once more, sample 1. Sample 2. You can hear it as well, right?
Well, I mean, there's obviously science behind it as well, right? So, I mean, obviously the guests are watching and they think they've guessed it. Probably sample 2 is warm water, and because the molecules, because the water is warm, the molecules expand, and so it allows more air into the water. But this obviously one can hear through the difference in the sound.
Yeah,
it's quite incredible,
and it's on a very big level, and because there's so much information, next to information, it's hooked in our memories. So with people of amnesia or like dementia even, that music brings back, brings back memories that were long forgotten. But I think we have a ultimate 90s edit. See if you can recognize.
Let's put on the ultimate 90s edit. See who can recognize the bits and pieces from the snippets.
Yes.
Ding ding bing bing dum 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 bam.
I believe I can fly. Woo. I believe
I think you guys recognize most of them. Did you ever buy Crazy Frog?
Never, but I had a Nokia 3310.
Oh, nice.
This obviously influences your perception, and I mean, of a brand or of a certain sector, category, product category.
Yeah, well, as you say, it puts you in a certain state of mind. The Space Jam, and actually, there's research from the University of Groningen as well that because it changes your mood, it changes your perception. So what they did is they actually had people look at neutral faces and then played happy or sad music. And this changed how the participants rated the neutral face, whether they saw a happy or sad face.
So actually what they were listening to was influencing their perception of what they were seeing.
Yeah. And that's what you're listening changes how you see the world around you.
Yeah.
It's a Radiohead should have a warning label.
Sure. But this leads us into our next point, which is basically what is well known these days as sonic branding, sonic DNA, music branding, and it's for us kind of finding that fantastical way and possibility of how to merge strategy and creativity. I think that's really the trick, let's dive a little bit into sonic branding, and then let's go further into the next step of the future of sound as we see it.
Yeah.
So
Well, so indeed. So I think the most, if you want to build that give information, recall, and change perception. Yeah, the standard assets like sound logo, visual, like the audio equivalent of a visual logo, voiceover, or we see more and more people also thinking about not just how to cast a voice, but how is he or she talking, also with the rise of voice assistants. The user experience sounds, which are apps, devices, but also the actual physical space, the physical environment someone operates in, and of course music. You determine your strategy. Is it a flexible logo, customized or fixed? And you roll it out over touch points. I think we also see a lot more 15-second Instagram ads and TikTok. Everyone needs to dance to music on TikTok. How do we create something that's viral? And
I think also you have to understand in a way that the actual world of sonic branding has had a bit of a bad rap until now because it's been dominated by 4-note logos.
Yeah.
And that's actually not what it is. It's really the ecosystem, as much as a visual ecosystem is important to a brand. It's really the sonic sound ecosystem that goes from the campaign on the campaign, yearly campaign for the main product of said brand, or the in-app sounds to from and to. It's the entire thing.
I think that's a good point. We're going beyond the jingle and bing bong.
Yeah.
I still love jingles.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so what we want to do is look at one case and then use that as we move through the chapters of today's situation and what's up for the future.
So we've selected a case which we've worked on, of course, because we found it to be a very extensive example of what we're talking about today. So it really guides us through the entire ecosystem of what we just spoke about, and also it's also a work in progress. So we've rolled out a few or quite a bit of assets for the brand Philips, but it really gives you insight into how this ecosystem works, and then we will lead into the future of sound and how it can be utilized for agencies, for brands, and for campaigns.
Yeah. So as a quick introduction, they came to us with a new visual identity, moving more into healthcare, need to be approachable with this new proposition and identity. They needed a new sound. And as Shai said, what could we do to go beyond a signature at the end of a commercial, but something that could live across all their divisions, whether it was the food, the oral healthcare, the beauty products, or the medical products, and maybe even go beyond advertising and towards products. And for that, we needed something strong, a concept, something we could really put sound from. And this is what we created for Philips.
Philips is a global brand, with their innovations improving the lives of millions of people across the globe. When they shifted their strategy to focus on health technology, they launched a brand identity to reflect that, and we were asked to create a new brand sound. A sound that rings true to what their brand stands for. A sound that is human and driven by technology. We went back to where it all began for Philips, the light bulb. The first innovation Philips brought to the world, and a strong visual symbol for ideas and innovation. We translated it into sound. And combined with the sounds from the human body, we built a playable instrument to serve as an integral part of the Philips brand identity. With the Philips instrument, we can create endless varieties of sounds and music compositions that are uniquely Philips. Imagine these sounds as jigsaw pieces that we can swap, stack, and rearrange to create a sonic identity that is memorable and can cater to all of their touch points. A logo to sign off on all of their communications. A music bank that caters to the wide range of content and events. The development of UI sounds that enable Philips devices to have a distinctive voice. But most of all, an overarching concept that enhances and further solidifies their brand, not only through advertising, but across all interactions their customers have with the brand, building a more cohesive and fitting brand experience on a global scale through sound. innovation and you, Philips.
Each time I watch that, I always think about brushing my teeth for some reason because of the toothbrush. But yeah, I mean, this leads us to what is the current state of the industry and, of course, the grand question, the holy grail, the future.
Yeah, and I think what is very interesting about the future, so, you know, what we see is everything's getting more and more connected, and everything's getting speakers. Everything's communicating with us, everything's demanding our attention.
Especially now, I mean, if you think about what COVID has done, putting people in home office, distancing, and having to be constantly confronted with the digital sphere, notification sounds on your computer, ringing of the phones, interaction, it's actually opened up a huge market for this category of sound to actually expand at a vast rate and push almost the future on us in a way.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, I think it's accelerating. But what you're saying, indeed, if everything's demanding our attention, it needs to be quick, it needs to be easy, and we want a decrease of screen interaction.
It also needs to be personable as well.
Yeah, and that's indeed, you know, of course, there will be a great role for everything that makes a brand in the future, but as we're moving towards a more screenless era, there's a bigger role for these three.
So these are the three pillars of what we will define as the future forward-moving way of music, sound, and voice becoming very important parts of brands going forward.
Yeah. So how can you create a brand perception through these three, and what's the cool things happening? First, let's go into music. You know, as you saw,
what we do on the daily basis.
I think it's why we all work here.
Right.
And yeah, as you saw, you know, from the examples in the power of sound, music is emotion. I think that's the shortcut to emotion. It gives you goosebumps, makes you cry, gets you excited. It's how we listen to it. But it's actually it's cool to see. Music is math. It's quite rational. We have a 12-tone system. We work with skills.
In the Western world.
Yes,
in the Western world.
Yeah. There's you have microtonalities, of course, but there's always there's rules to the madness of making music, because that's why we use it. A good example actually is the way you structure chords. So if you have a single note and you stack a second and a third, and you get a harmony, that's known as a chord. And if you stack them 1, 3, 5, you get a chord that sounds as such. And if you then have the 3 notes and you take the middle one and you lower it just by a half step, so you keep the first and the third note the same, you get a minor chord. So it's just the middle note that changes. And then major, minor,
happy, sad.
Yeah, indeed. And I think, you know, we see a lot of these rules. Could you just take it further? I think that's what we see in advertising a lot as well.
True. You have obviously the famous ukulele, like clapping, whistling. It's a happy commercial.
Yeah.
Of course, that triggers that emotion. And then you get the minor, düster kind of sad piano emotion, which triggers other emotions, of course.
A lot of the COVID ads have in a certain way,
of course.
But yeah, so if you say music is emotion and music is math, it's quite cool, because then there's actually a validity to saying emotion is math.
So this is where you can start to kind of have strategy coming in and influencing the creativity.
It becomes quite eerie. Yes. If you listen to this is actually composed by an algorithm called Emily Howell. She's on Spotify for the past 10 years. And it's haunting. And so no human was involved. And it's always thought creativity was what sets us apart, but people take it further. You know, another example of how we can distill musical compositions into math is the
Beatles AI.
Yeah.
So what they did here was they actually took the catalog of the Beatles, they fed it into the AI, and the AI took all the information, all the chord progressions, took Lennon's best of and McCartney's best of, mashed it together, and this is actually what the AI composed.
Yeah.
hear, I mean, you even hear Ringo's sloppy drumming in there, but it's quite interesting that it's of course the way Lennon and McCartney put those tracks together in the original versions touches us perhaps maybe more than that, but it still triggers your mind to know that that's Beatles-esque. It's got the feel of the Beatles, and so in a way, yeah, creativity may not be what makes us unique.
Yeah, I think that, it's scary as a musician. It's like, are the robots coming for my job as well? I thought it was just the lawyers, man. But I think and I think what else I saw then is like, okay, but it's not. We also said it's not exactly it, and you also have this.
But it guides you.
It guides you, but you also have this punk band of just robots playing punk. And it wasn't a punk concert because there was no mosh pit, there was no blood, there was no some guitar being set on fire on the stage, and therefore it missed the interaction, it missed the actual scene, it missed the emotional spontaneity of what makes it unique. And I think on the interaction, that's what makes it unique. Yeah, and that's where we're also heading, and also with how we interact with brands and with our digital platforms, we need to work with the interaction. This is a good example of an artist who actually worked with, he launched his album online, and people could interact with it through the website.
Quite nice. He put all the various songs in different arrangements in the website, and you can kind of scroll and move the things to rearrange bits and pieces, and it's, people were sitting on this website for 20 minutes at a time, looking at this guy and like, oh, I can do this with the song or what have you, but there they are then engaged. And I think that's really an important part of what we're trying to say here, is that through interaction, then you start to engage. It's not, it's not just pushing it onto you. Exactly.
So have a quick listen. Did I miss it? Oh, no. Okay, well, there was more, but I definitely allow you to check it out.
I think the idea comes across, though.
Yeah.
So basically, we're going to revert back to the Philips case for a moment, because this taps very much on this point.
Yeah. Well, it's where I'm trying to push it as well. So what you heard, we did something with the logo, of course. You hear the glass sound plucking, but we created an entire instrument. Just grabbing that here.
Maureen's actually playing this at the moment. You can't see because of the camera,
but what we then had is, what if we created an algorithm? Because we also had pads, with the cello bow, we had created an algorithm that would compose music self-generated for spaces.
And actually environments where
it could be fully, and if we got it even further, you could do a little rhythmical background. Okay. How cool would it be if you could use the data from wearables, like people's heart rate, how their blood pressure is, how they slept, how they feel at that time, to influence how many BPM, how fast the track is, or how many layers a track has.
So actually, a kind of a room that assesses the situation of the people that's in the room and reacts accordingly to that data being processed as it feeds into the AI.
I think situational composing, also looking at hospital soundscapes.
Especially in COVID time.
Yeah, they need to be better. We need to start applying the functional use of music more into physical spaces. But yeah, so that's sort of what we did for Philips.
And yeah, I mean, the topic now is the three pillars: music, sound, and voice. And of course, we've covered quite a bit about music. Maureen, what I'd like to do now is with you dive a little deeper into sound itself. So the sound designs and sound as a whole, because what we've learned from the previous chapter is music is not really anything more than organized sound. You know,
That's true.
Lennon and McCartney were very brilliant at organizing it in a certain way, which appealed to a very vast majority of the population of this planet. But that's really what it is, organized sound.
Yeah,
you know?
sounds, the micro sounds are taking such a big role in our everyday life now, man. So if you go deeper, you know, what are the sounds of today? I think these are like little skeuomorphisms of nonsense in there like that. Or
It's some of them actually can make you nervous because you think you've got to you start, but this is what their intention is. They intended to program you to have certain reactions to certain things. It's kind of the the Pavlov theory, right?
yeah, because well, you need to know that something happened. If you don't hear the sound or you have any confirmation that your mail is sent, you kind of want to check your sent mailbox if it actually went out. You know, the car door theory as well, but we'll get to that. But that's okay, because due to the Pavlov, if all these sounds are built into our routines, you know, from our alarms to our coffee machines, they influence our behavior.
Yeah,
I think,
and this is, I mean, you see this like with the example on the screen now. When you pay using Apple Pay as the example that we have up here today, you have a certain sound when you get the payment notification. Do you play Mario, by the way?
I used
Mario
to a lot.
Brothers, because we've sat here thinking about this quite a bit, and if you listen to the Apple Pay sound, it's quite a little ode to the Mario coin sound. Have you got it up there?
Yeah. So this is the Apple Pay sound, and we go to Mario.
So the classic Mario coin or start, what is it, coin or start sound, they probably had that as a brief.
It's built. I think it's the generation that
Do you see the coin jumping out of your phone?
No, I do.
I see the coin jumping out of my phone.
And but the association might have already been there, so why not use it?
Exactly.
You know, if we're wanting devices to speak to us in this manner, this is a great way of doing it. You don't want to hear like payment success. If you just hear,
you know, and also you know which app you're in.
True.
You know you're not in Google Pay. You know you're in Apple.
Yeah, and trust it.
And yeah, I mean the effects can have a vast impact on a human's perception as well.
Yeah, that's exactly why you know, that raises the question: if it's so big for our perception, should a Rolex watch sound the same as a Swatch?
Although the functionality is the same, it's a watch.
Yeah, but I can also imagine, like, you know, it's also both ways around. It's also like Swatch just wants to be more playful and youthful than maybe a Rolex does.
I mean, it also goes further into like car door, for example, which is the next slide. BMW car door, closing a BMW car door is an extremely satisfying sound to some. And these things are designed. This is sound design, a real sound design, technical sound design in a way. The price point of the car should meet what it sounds like. You wouldn't want to buy a car for upwards of 50,000 euros and close the door and hear rattling metal, for example.
Well, and think, you know, same for the engine sounds as well.
Absolutely. And now with everything going electric, it's such a battle of who's going to have program the best engine sound. I've heard Fiat doing a symphony every time you pull off in the car.
So
the new Fiat 500 plays a symphony, and you can actually download and change engine sounds at your will for the new car. Yeah, so cool. That's the heading towards the future of sound.
Yeah, man. And just quickly, what we did for Philips was also kind of fun, because we are looking at we had to do UI sounds for all their devices because they have a centralized asset system. So all their markets, all their app developers got logos, iconography, didn't get sounds. And they asked us, can you make a set of UI sounds? And as always, we said yes. And then we're like, shit, how? But we cracked it. We went into we spoke with a lot, but actually we watched a lot of Disney. It's like, it's giving your devices a little voice as well.
And there has to be that human element when you do it, because you interacting with the device, like that Mario example, something from the past perhaps that you feel at home with. So there's a personable connection to it. it's not just a pling or a plong, but it's rather a feeling, a connection. And why don't you show what you did with actually creating those UI sounds? Because I think that's quite interesting how you explain it.
But like what you said about that emotional connection, there's so much in the voice of a person. So, you know, the way we say, hey, it's phonetically the same. It's the inflection that changes the
and it's
context.
cross-cultural as well.
Yeah.
Even though there's certain things in different cultures and different languages that people react with, it's still, when you're confused, it's always a in any place.
Or if you're, for example, if you're sad or like you were a bit disappointed, you could go, "Aww." And then we use the light bulb samples to actually mimic that. So if we had, you did not reach your daily steps, or maybe you slept terrible, or
The app sound would be,
or maybe more of an alert notification, or even more intense.
Why?
And
so it follows the inflection of the inflection of the human voice in a way, and that gives it that personable.
Yeah, it made it a little bulb, and I think that's quite interesting. You know, what you saw with the cars, the watches, every little brand is designing their sounds, and we're building that ecosystem of brands we interact with, whether it's our car, our fridge, you know, the Ubers we take, or where we order food. We start building our own little app set with sounds and brands around us. But I think it's quite interesting because the access point is the one operating. And
whether it be, Google, Apple.
Yeah, or you know, for the lonely guy using Cortana from Microsoft. But that's the battle that's taking place now. I think that's also, like, I heard Alibaba is now even starting voices, but also insurances, and just bring in the entire ecosystem home.
Which obviously leads us to the third pillar of our presentation here, our webinar, which is voice.
Yeah.
Your interaction with your OS is really becoming more and more, obviously, with Siri and voices. It's becoming very voice-based, and it's voice is also obviously a part of personal identity in a way. You know, it's how unique is voice?
Well, that's the scary
part. And how can you own it?
Yeah, because I think what we're about to show is voice. We always thought was unique, but Adobe now has this software called Adobe Voco, where with just 30 seconds of someone's voice, they can mimic it completely text to speech. Just a quick clip of their launch.
Here's more. We can actually type something that's not here. So I heard that actually on that day, Michael actually kissed our Jordan. So sorry. To recover the truth, let's do it. So let's remove the word "my" here.
Your secret's out, Jordan.
And just type the word Jordan.
Ooh.
And here we go.
And I kissed Jordan and my dogs.
Yeah, I mean, this is taps. It's obviously it's a quick example, but it's getting more and more advanced these days, and it leads us to kind of hyper personalization. So Siri has a set voice, Alexa has a set voice, but I think the future holds many more possibilities, especially with that example we just saw. And it's really kind of like, what about having either your own voice? I mean, I wouldn't want to listen to my voice talking to me all the time. I'd probably get extremely irritated with that. But what about doing something fun, like having Obama as your voice, or Morgan Freeman, for example?
How cool would it be if you wake up every morning, you go downstairs and you hear,
"Your toast is ready."
Or just before your parents come in,
"Your parents are coming in. Your parents are coming in."
I mean, Morgan Freeman is basically the voice of God.
I think
in a way,
it'd be very cool to hear that in speakers all over your house. Like, you should go to bed now.
But this is the missing link, right? This is the missing link between digital and the analog worlds, in a way, the real reality and digital sphere.
Well, it's scary because we cannot distinguish fake voices from real voices, and we get the same dopamine reactions from hearing voices that we think we know. So it fully blends this sort of code pixel world with, you know, the world we grew up in. And
it's like those deep fakes. You have obviously the face, but if the voice doesn't match, you know it's fake. But if the voice matches, the sound plays an extremely important role. You're in. You're completely believing what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think for fake news, but also for indeed the voice assistants, the voice chats, chatbots, it's revolutionary. We have the Black Mirror-esque example of it is also, you know, this was a Russian coder who unfortunately lost her boyfriend in a car crash, and what she did is actually create a algorithm based on all his chats, emails, Facebook, WhatsApp, whatever she had.
She could actually interact with him after he was gone.
Yeah, she created a bot, but it would actually also take into account APIs such as the weather. So the bot knew if it was raining. The bot knew from her calendar, so you could build it and then, you know, add deepfakes, add a hologram, add the voice, and this could be the future of graveyards. You live forever in pixels. I think it's you know, what about World of Warcraft? It's with the AR, VR, I think this is changing the way we also value human interaction.
Yeah,
it's going to change the way we socialize.
100%.
Cool.
So what I think actually this all comes down to, if you think about it, Maureen, it's really we've got these three pillars: music, sound, voice, and it's kind of led us to the point where we've realized music is the fourth dimension in a way, you know. And it's really, you know, the famous saying, if art is how we decorate space, then music is how we decorate time.
And, you know, I think how we value time has become more and more important. And yeah, and indeed.
The future is now, it is also to come.
Yeah, but I think the accelerating rate in which everything's happening, you know, everything's got speakers, but now everything has its own processing system as well. You know, an iPhone has the same processing power as the first NASA satellites. It's accelerating. Crazy. And that's changing everything in how we interact with advertising and brands.
And of course, that obviously affects the role of sound and music and making it that much more important to accelerate the advertising aspect of music and brands, what we do.
Yeah, because, you know, what you saw, it's also going beyond simply going for information or recall or changing perception within ads or brand perception. But I think it's more about the relationship. You know, you want to interact with a brand, and therefore a brand has to become more than a PowerPoint or a set of brand guidelines. It needs to be a person, and a little entity that people also really get emotionally attached to. I think that's why you have so much discussions between, are you a BMW or a Mercedes man or a Red Bull or cheap knockoff brand?
Exactly, and I think that we're coming to almost the end of the whole webinar, so we will slowly start wrapping it up. We know that the questions have been coming in, and but you want to?
Yeah, I'll quickly finish up, because I think, you know, if brands become that little entity, it's good to say also when designing UI or even logos, you know, it's good to keep the end consumer in mind. And sometimes silence is the best option, because you don't want to force yourself. If it's about a relationship, you don't want to keep sending. It's about that interaction we talked about. And then, you know, it's the advice of don't sell, don't push. You know, the ad blockers innovate just as quickly. Don't sell. Tell.
Exactly. Creating meaningful conversations. Interaction matters, like you said. You need, I think you need brand purpose and not forcing things onto people. And this is a very fine tool to do so. And of course, people will forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And that relates back to any kind of music you've ever heard in your life, any kind of sound you've ever heard in your life. It puts you back to that moment where you first heard it, or a memory, and that's, you may not remember the color of the sofa where you kissed the girl or the girl kissed you, but you will definitely remember that you kissed. And And I think that wraps up our webinar today. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in and taking the time on this lovely Friday morning. Thank you very much, Marianne.
Very nice. Here. We have questions and we have announcing the winner of the quiz, right?
You want to take that? Oh, I have not my phone. Yeah, we will announce the winner of the quiz.
Yeah, so I think that's, so how forward thinking, I'll read out the question as well. How forward thinking do you think brands are now in developing sonic brands to utilize the growing amount of technology, smart speakers, and who's doing a good job? I think what is happening now is it's like a second revival. So in the rise of brands in the 70s, you got brand identities, and that's also where the first logos came. You know, the T-Mobile, the McDonald's logos, of course, been around for ages. But now we see it's really going back to building beyond a singular touch point. I think, you know, what MasterCard did is very interesting, really going beyond the end of a commercial, but going towards the sound of payment as the first sonic identity. And I think brands are not using the technology as much as is possible, but I'm very happy to see that also within our field, we're not explaining what we do. We sometimes get explained by our clients what they want, and we're going towards flexible logos. We're going towards you know, more customization of music to fit context instead of one track suits all. And
that's actually quite an important point when you're talking about, especially about a creative campaign within the brand ecosystem, because there you often need to have something that varies very much from the logo itself. You know, that's irrelevant when it comes to telling a story through music for a campaign, which has nothing to do with a pling or a plong, but rather a tale of people meeting or a trip up into space or whatever the campaign is about. But there are very fine ways to weave through the brand sound and DNA into that, so that within the music creating and telling a tale, you still have the understanding of which brand you're actually listening to. And I think that's very interesting. Guys, we're running out of time slowly. We have a few more questions. There's quite a nice question over here. You take it.
Yeah. Explain in more detail. A bit unorthodox.
So somebody asked about the Philips sounds and how they were created, and in more detail, and how their the software instrument works, and how we sampled it, and what did we do with the actual transients and the audio to manipulate it to be able to be an instrument. So Marianne will guide you through it. We worked with obviously developers to implement a software instrument into Contact.
Yeah, we broke 400 light bulbs, sampled them all different ways, and then organized the sound samples.
So you use those. You use also different microphones and stick-on microphones. Those
contact microphones,
right.
Microphones, indeed. And then we took the best samples, indeed. So you know, for the long swell type of a brand, the long swell type of sound, we might take the one where we're actually on the cello bow. And then we would take that sound, make it loopable, and plug it into Contact, and then make sure, you know, that if you tune it and you have all these effects, that you could still play around with it. And that's how we created this VST. It's what you see here.
A software instrument.
Yeah, virtual software instrument. And I'm not a designer, but I'm still really glad that we got the phaser one even to light up the bulb and so. And I think just to elaborate a bit on that, what I like about this is it's also, you know how you hear a track and you can immediately see if it's Coldplay or Radiohead or a Pharrell produced track. That's what we're trying to do by distinguishing certain parameters of sound in music. You could kind of say you're trying to turn the brand into a band, and whether it's by an instrument, a certain vocal, or certain melody, you try to create that distinguished sound that people can immediately say, oh, it's from that brand artist, so to speak.
I think I really like the turning a brand into a band. I think that's really our duty as a music agency, more or less. The last question which we'll take is, what does the lead time, sorry, wrong question, but do you have to educate brands on the influence and importance of sound and visuals are always prioritized? Of course, we always have to reintroduce brands and people into the importance of sound and music. Yes, definitely. But I think as times are progressing, people are getting more and more aware of it.
If I can add, what we used to see is that we were really a standalone project, and what's happening now is, of course, visuals are extremely the heart and soul of the brand. But when they're being revisited, you know, purpose and then the visuals, we are now onboarded more and more during the process, which is also for us a lot more fun because we get to be, when, you know, we're included when the iron's hot and the sign sounds.
What is also nice is you get to interact, especially with the agencies, in terms of the creative concepts. So, you know, this is really the marriage, and that's where, again, strategy meets creativity. Is really often of the time the creatives from the agency have far more insights into a brand because they've worked on the brand for such a long time. So really bringing those worlds of our knowledge of music and sound with the creatives' knowledge of the brand from the agency can really be an extensive and awesome marriage. I will do one more question. What does the lead time look like for a sonic branding project, and is it expensive? We will have a email address that you can write further questions to. The lead time usually is between anywhere from 3 months to 6 months. It can be done shorter, it can take longer, depending on the size, scale, and scope of the project, of course. And many other factors that come into play during such a project.
Yeah, and I think it's more expensive than a singular music production, but we're not way out there.
It's not, it doesn't, let's say this, obviously each project has to be tailor quoted, but it shouldn't cost an arm and a leg, and it should definitely be fitting to what your needs are. So it's really a hard scale to give a finite answer to, but yeah.